Good evening. My name is Jim Kello. Welcome to New Tracks Meetup. This is where mentors help modelers build. If you're new to the show, I hope that you'll go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and register. You'll get an email, and if you'll confirm that that is your email address, then you're registered, and from that point on, you'll get notices of the login links to our Zoom show each time. So I encourage you to do that. If you do that and you get the links, I also encourage you to send the links to your friends who you think could benefit from our show. The more the merrier. And we count on your recommendation to your friends as one way that we build viewership for the shows. We need a lot of help. We've had several people volunteer because of their comments and my request for help, but we need more help. So if you have something that you can offer us in the way of technical help to produce our shows, that's what we desperately need. We have it doesn't have to be running the whole show. It can just be a small part of it, but we definitely need a lot of people to keep the show going and to make it as good as we can possibly get it. So if you consider volunteering a little bit of your time, we certainly would appreciate it. And you can send me an email. My email address is jimkello1, numeric 1, at gmail.com. And I look forward to hearing from you because we really do appreciate it, but we desperately do need help to produce our shows. I don't know whether you've heard about it or not or seen it, but the Walters Company is offering a $2,500 scholarship for model railroad seniors who are graduating this year or who are living in this country. And they've got rules and so forth for entering their contest. It's gauged toward model railroaders who are going into either a 2-year or a 4-year university and majoring in one of the STEM areas in that school. They're interested in people and model railroaders particularly who have experienced help in their technical education from being a model railroader. And to enter the contest, they want you to tell them what you think of that and whether being a model railroader has been a benefit to you or not. I think this is wonderful. I've not heard of a company doing this before in model railroading. I would hope that more companies would do this and encourage younger modelers to experience the thrill of being able to build models in model railroading, to actually build a model railroad, to learn how the railroads actually operate. I think it's a wonderful educational augmentation to the formal education that kids get. And I would highly recommend it to anybody. But I'm really enthusiastic about what I have read so far about the Walters program. I think this is just something that other companies should follow suit on. And I think it's something that whether you're a parent with high school graduates, kids, or grandparents, either one, and your child has been a model railroader, I think it's something that you ought to consider because $2,500 is not a small amount of money to a kid that's going into being a freshman in either a 2-year or 4-year university. It also fits in very nicely, in my opinion, with my philosophy toward the Association of Professional Model Builders. The program that I did for that association that had both a high school graduate that year, as well as a freshman at Case Western. Those modelers who learned the capabilities that they have to start their own companies in model railroading by 3D printing their parts. To me, that's exactly what fits into my feeling that model railroading is a great avenue for people to become professional model builders. And I think Walters is in effect saying the same thing, but in a different standpoint, and they're offering money to back up their opinion. So I encourage you to take a look at the Walters program. I encourage you to promote the Walters program. As I say, it may be something that they've done for years. I don't know. This is the first time I've heard about it. And when I read the information that I received, I was really impressed. So that's why I'm taking the time to talk about it this evening. Now I'd like to go to Chris Course to talk about our next My Bill coming up on June the 26th. Chris, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. We've got Jeremy Wyant is going to be taking over in my absence because I'll be gone starting in a couple weeks. And Jeremy will be taking over the My Builds. I noticed that he asked a lot of inquisitive questions that is exactly what we need to get the My Build sparked and moving forward. But what I would ask of you is to send your photos and maybe a brief description to Jeremy at the email that I put in the chat. And what he will do is he will compile them in the PowerPoint that I've sent him, and he will adapt that to the current situation of based on what he's gotten for entries. And when it's your turn, you're free to speak to the build that you did. And it's not specific to any of the special build-alongs that we've done. It can be. It doesn't have to be. Again, like we've mentioned before, it doesn't have to be the best thing you've ever done. It doesn't have to be the worst thing you've ever done. It's just maybe you're stuck on something, you need some help. So whatever you're working on model railroad wise that you'd like to show off for whatever reason, whether it's to, bragging rights or whether you need to get some help, this is a good place to do it. So anyway, please send your photos to Jeremy Wyant at the email listed in the chat, and he will take care of that for you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chris. I really appreciate it. Hope you have a safe trip. Now I'd like to go to Ted Becker, who's filling in for Paul Thompson. And Ted is going to give us his quick tips, assuming that the storm allows him to do that. So Ted, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
The storm has passed. Lights flickered, and I got nervous that I was going to not have power to make this presentation, but it's working out. Okay. If you've been attending these sessions for a while, you've heard about stains and washes, especially from the hunters. One of the problems I have is when I'm applying washes, I like to use a bigger brush that doesn't fit in the bottle. You can pour them into something else, and then you got the mess of pouring them back. Well, what I've started doing is I pour them into these wide mouth mason jars, and then I just seal them up and leave it in there. This particular jar of India ink and alcohol, also called Inkalhol, I don't know, this is probably about 3 years old. I refill it once in a while, but I don't get a lot of evaporation. You get a nice rubber seal. This one is the half pint size. They have them in pint, which is also usable. You go on up to quart, then it gets a little too tall. Label it, please label it, and do something I have not been doing is when you mix your own, put the proportions on the label so you can duplicate it. They're not very expensive. I looked this up yesterday. There's 4 jars at Walmart for $5 essentially. So they're not very expensive. If you mung up the lids, you can buy replacement lids. They're universal. And that's my tip for today.
Well, thank you so much, Ted. I'm glad the storm passed you by, and Appreciate the information on the tip. Thank you so much. Well, let me talk about the special segments for tonight. The first one is, I've got a question. Well, we've had several questions, and I'm sorry to say I don't have answers for these people yet. One of them was a person asked about the techniques and the tools and the best way of soldering feeder wires to 1/48 scale, O scale track. And if somebody would like to do a short segment on that, please let me know, because I'd like to be responsive to the modeler who asked the question, but so far no one has stepped forward. So if you'd like to do a short segment on it, 15 minutes or so, please let me know. The second area is spray painting. And the person got a new spray piece of equipment for Christmas and would like some help on the best ways of using it and things that tips and so forth. And I know that some people have corresponded directly with this modeler, and I appreciate that. But I think it's a subject that a lot of people might be interested in. So I'm looking for somebody again to do a short segment on that. It doesn't have to be 2 or 3 weeks or anything like that, but a short 15-minute or so segment on it to answer this gentleman's question.
Well, as I told you, Jim, before, I'm working on one and needed to answer some questions from him so I can answer his questions in my clinic. So it is in the works.
Gotcha. And the third one is I have a modeler who is building along his first wooden O-scale kit with Rick Hunter and Marine. And he sent me an email. He wants to build several O-scale European style wooden buildings. And he says he can't find a manufacturer to buy them from. So I'm looking for a manufacturer of O-scale wooden European style buildings for this gentleman. So if anybody knows of one, if you'd send me the information, I'll pass it on to him or put you in direct contact with him.
Jim, that didn't have to be wooden, any kind of buildings, any even plastic.
Okay, that helps, because I think somebody can help you with the plastic side of it. But I thought the email that I got said wooden. So that's what I've been trying to find.
What was in the other stuff? And I didn't say.
Okay. So anybody that knows a manufacturer of European O-scale structures, that's what we're looking for. So now I'd like to go to Rick and Marine Hunter for their build along of their S-scale King Truss Bridge. So Rick, Marie, thank you so much. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Just to, for the newcomers, we're just going to quick go over what is going to happen here, okay? So,
Okay, share.
well, no, not on the camera yet.
Oh.
So this is our little King Post Bridge. That's N scale. There it is in HO. There it is in S. And there it is in O. And that's what we're building. We've done this many times at conventions and so on. It's just that now we have to plan the segments out as opposed to doing it all in one shot. So I'm just going to switch the cameras here over to Maureen, and we'll see what we can do today. There.
All right.
Now, everybody should be at this stage now. We got this far last week, and you had a little bit of homework to put the stringers on underneath the ties. But the whole point of it is this is now a rigid assembly. You can do anything to it. You can drop it on the floor. So now it's rigid, so now you can work with it without fearing of anything else happening to it. So tonight we're going to,
We're gonna put the rest of the ties on this assembly and then put some NBWs on the ties. So got your wood glue. I've got my tight bond in my little applicator bottle. And I'm just gonna, in between these ties that are 4 ties apart, you're gonna put 3 ties until you get to the center, and then you're gonna put 2 ties in between those 2 sections. So I just take my little bottle here and I start putting my glue on. I don't go by the drawing. I just kind of go by eye. And
you gotta remember every 4th tie was put on last week, and it is to the drawing. This you have to do to your eyesight. So what looks good. So you put one on the quarter mark, one on the half mark, and on the 3/4 mark, and then you look at them, and this is why we don't use CA glue. So you have that few moments to adjust it.
yeah, I just use my tweezers to kind of move them around to where it looks good. Trying to get them even on both sides. If there's any glue that's oozing out, I'll just take it off with the tweezers.
Now, because you distressed all 4 sides of the ties, if you want to get particular, you can actually look at the tie and say, okay, this is the best viewed side, so you can use it on top. We know through doing this so many times that each side is about the same for us, but for the beginner, one side might be better than the other.
Don't put too much glue on. You don't need very much. Then you don't have to clean it off.
We have found over the years that people put way too much glue on, and that's why it oozes out all the time. We get asked, what do you do if the glue dries and you can see it? Well, usually what we do is say, take our black creosote stain or our creosote black stain or black paint and just touch it and it becomes a big knot. At least it doesn't look like a blob of glue.
Or some fine sandpaper over
Yeah.
it too. Whoops, or a file.
Now, in our travels, because we do shows all over the country from coast to coast, coast to coast again, we do a lot of walking of tracks and bridges and so on. And yeah, it's nice to have them symmetric, but it's not overly important to have them completely symmetric, because through shifting over the years and the techniques used in putting it together, they're not always straight. Maureen, when she first started, very symmetric, and I'm trying to say, oh no, if it's out of place, if it's too long, or if it's a little crooked, that's fine, because that's the way they were, within reason. So because it's rigid, you can see this is actually an easy process that goes pretty quick. If it sticks out over the stringer below, that's okay. I know some of the people who are registered with us are building it with us, and other ones have to build it later because the laptop or the computer is not where the workstation is. I think Greg is a good example of that.
Kite Bond is such a, I don't know, I really like that glue. It really is nice and tacky.
Many years ago, we used to use Weld Bond because Weld Bond is made about an hour away from us. And we used to take it to the shows and sell it. It was a awful strong glue. If it oozed out, it was a bubble of clear yuck, but the strength was unbelievable. Like if a piece actually fell on the floor, the wood would break before the joint would break. And then we had the issue where, like when we do shows, we're a motorhome and a trailer, and of course all the stock was in the trailer, and it froze, and we lost a whole box of glue, and we decided, okay, this isn't worth it. Glue you can get anywhere.
I think that's pretty good.
It's almost looking like a bridge.
Yeah. So now I would normally put a weight on there, maybe put a book or something over top, and then weight the book and let it sit for just maybe half hour or so.
Take the bottles for a sec.
Oh.
For the new people, this is our weathering mix that we manufacture, and because this is 8 ounces and this is 8 ounces, there's a whole pound of weight on that. The only reason we're building an S scale one right now is so it's big enough to see. Like if we were doing the little N scale one, you wouldn't be able to see anything on it.
So anyway, you would let that set up and glue for, maybe 20 minutes. That's all you need. And then we're going to do the NBWs.
NBWs, that stands for nut, bolt, washer. And the ones we use are actually Tichy Train Group. There's other manufacturers out there, but we like these ones because they're kind of a reddy brown color, I guess you'd call it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't really have to color them in any way. Now, if you actually look at it, you'll see that it is a hex nut on a round washer.
What I'm doing right now is I'm just piloting a hole to take these NBWs, and I like to use a drill bit. So you've got a little drill bit in your kit, so you can use that one. Just put it in your pin vise and just pilot a hole on every 4th tie.
You can see on the drawing all the little dots there. That's what the NBWs are.
Yeah.
And what you need to do is target it. So you put your drill bit about halfway through where the stringer is and halfway through the tie, and there's your crosshairs, and go for it. Now don't go all the way through because it's only needs to be like 1/8 of an inch deep, maybe at the most.
Just try to get it cleared out as much you can.
And the fellows who are doing N scale, this is where we said that you might need the little pen.
That little pen. You could use a push pin if you want. I don't like doing that. I like using the drill bit just because it takes that wood out for you. I need space to aim for. So,
well, actually, a push-pull pin leaves a big crater, and it's easier to put the NBW to sink it home.
Now, when you get closer to the center, it's not 4 ties away. You just look on your drawing and just place it where the drawing says.
This is much easier to do this now. Usually an NBW is something you do closer to the end, but when you get the whole structure together, it's really hard to get your hand and the pin vise in there to do it. So it's so much easier to do it now. That's what we try to outline in our instructions. It's easier to do something ahead of time than afterwards, because you can get yourself caught in a position that you just can't get in there. Now, we had given a segment on NBWs there a couple months ago, and you'll see all sorts of neat little techniques. After that segment, we had somebody come in and say, instead of cutting the NBW straight across, to cut it a little bit on an angle so that the tail of it has a point to it. So it's actually easier to install. And we have kind of took that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That was a great idea.
Great idea.
So we learned too.
You end scalers, if you've had your pen, you're done by now, I'm sure.
Now the N scale does have MBW, so using the small MBW, the bigger ones are actually square nut on a square washer. So you'll find those later. That's about 2 weeks or 3 weeks away. So an N scale, yes, there are MBWs for that, but that is for the rods, not for doing this. You gotta remember, Maureen has done thousands of these, so she's pretty quick at
Thanks for the pressure.
it.
So I've got all the holes piloted. So now I'm gonna cut off these little NBWs off the casting. So just make sure your X-Acto knife is nice and sharp. And if you want to do it the way that gentleman suggested, just do it on a little bit of an angle. And if you're doing that, then you're obviously just going to be able to do one at a time. Do it on a white background, and you'll be able to see them well.
This is where 50% of your MBWs go flying somewhere where you can't find them.
Just just make sure you've got
Jim knows that.
you've got your finger, your pointer finger right kind of over top of it when you're cutting it, and it won't fly away on you. And leave a pretty good tail. I think you can see that. I'm not sure if you can or not, but
Like a lot of people, when they cut them off, they try to cut the whole spew at one time. Wrong. That's completely uncontrollable.
get yourself a fair amount here to work with.
Need 14.
14.
14 anyways.
I'm not sure how many. I think I'll just do one screw here. Oops.
But the MBWs are something that you do various times along the way.
Yeah, you won't need them all tonight, so don't cut them all off. Got some to put on the bracing.
And do not sneeze.
There we go. I'm gonna push them up on the white part here. Okay.
You said no sneezing. Is coughing okay?
Depends on how strong the cough is.
Then just get yourself a little pot of glue. I just use your Tight Bond or your whatever, Elmer's or whatever you got, whatever wood glue. Just put a little dab on the wax paper, and then take those nice pointy tweezers that I was talking about last week. They just have to be approximated together. You know, you get some of those tweezers that the ends kind of flare out.
Yeah, the points have to meet.
Yeah, it's pretty.
If they're flared, they won't work.
It's pretty impossible to pick these things up if the points aren't together, for sure. So just grab it behind, just underneath the head, and then.
So Larry also brought up a good question. What type of squirt ball are you using for that glue?
Oh, that little applicator bottle. You can find those on Amazon. Just look up a glue applicator bottle, and they come with different size needle gauges. I'm using the 18 gauge, but you'll get a package of about maybe 8 of them for something like $12.99, and they'll have different size gauge needles. I prefer the bigger one. I don't know why. I just like it better. It works great. So go on Amazon and just look up glue applicator bottles. There's all different kinds. But this is a really good one. There's one there that will give you the applicator bottles, plus that little funnel we were talking about last week. It helps you put your weather mix back in the in your bottle.
Well, the other thing is to use a mason jar.
Yeah, or just use the mason jar. So yeah, grab that NBW under the head. Let me try this one again. Just under the head. And then dip the tail in the glue and go for that hole. Just pop it in. This one doesn't want to go. My first one. Try again. There you go. So just pop it in, give it a tap on the top. I usually take my finger and just dab it so that the excess glue comes off. And
Yeah, it's hard to see them now when they're in there, but you'll find in about 3 weeks when we put the highlight color on, it actually emphasizes them. And you'll be able to see with your naked eye that it is a hex nut. It gives a third dimension to it.
This takes a little bit of time, for sure. I don't know if you can see them or not.
It's really hard, isn't it?
Well, there's supposed to be one there.
Yeah.
One there.
Yeah.
But yeah, this takes some time. This one's bouncing around on me because the wax paper is not smooth.
Static electricity too.
Get yourself some extra light. That helps. And I'm having trouble with that one. Patience is key, for sure.
I always say if you do 10, you're an expert.
Well, I do have a question with the comparison to the queen post. Is this right now sort of, there's no difference between the two at this point, or no?
Well, the queen is a king post that's elongated. Okay, the V's at the end are the same, but in between the two V's, it's horizontal. And that still gives the same tension and compression. Of course, it took some time for them to figure that out. And then if you look at the queen post, that's actually the forerunner of the Howell truss. So a king post usually could span up to about 50 feet, depending on how big of timbers they could get for it, where a queen post can be multiple. It can be one queen post after another, and as long as it's got piers underneath. And it looks pretty cool to have 3 or 4 of them in a row.
But right now, the construction wise, it's the same, except that you just got longer pieces.
Basically, yeah.
Gotcha.
It's
Understood.
got more rods in it too. Like the queen posts from the top of the truss to where it meets the let me see if I can show you where it comes down to here. So if you just take this and kind of spread it out, and then the rods have a big X in the middle. just to hold everything taut as part of the integrity of the bridge.
But you have not gotten that far on this kit yet.
No.
We're
Well, we have the
deviating.
queen post. It's a separate kit.
Yes.
And another place where you use a king and a queen is on the braking systems under any type of freight car. Again, the king has one vertical rod where the brake lines come off of it, and the queen brake line comes down a slant and then across on the horizontal and back. And again, it's got two vertical trusses on it.
Oh, okay.
And that's exactly the same structure.
Rick, if you don't mind me asking, do you know how they got the names King Post and Queen Post for those two designs or styles?
I've thought about that many times, and all I can think of was it was such a structure that maybe the king decided to have it. I want this across my mold, and they called it the king post. I'm not sure. The king post is only one truss, and that can be a wood truss or multiples of the rod. That's actually how it progressed. It was the vertical rod was actually a wood timber to start with, and they just weren't strong enough. So then it became a rod, and then 2 rods, and then 3 rods, and 4 rods, and 5 rods. And by the time they got that far up, they scrapped the whole idea. Just go to concrete, steel and concrete. But see, back then, and I use the TH&B as a good example. That's the Toronto, Hamilton, Buffalo. There's a lot of little rivers going across there. And most of them, to start with, were post bridges. So that's right in our area right here that they were used a lot. But I think it was about 1830 or 1840, like 80% of the bridges in North America were a king or a queen. At that time, they didn't have these big long spans. So the locomotive would have to go down an incline, cross the little bridge, and then back up the other side.
That's it. Got those done. So they're finished. I think we have some time, Rick, if you want to do the ties. I'll file the ties at the end of the
Okay.
4 ties.
We need to do this for homework. At the end of these ties, they are actually maybe protruding out over the stringer.
Might be.
That is not a good, because the diagonal comes up like this, and it has to rest against the stringer to do a tight bond, okay? So if these last 4 ties are protruding any little bit, it's going to interfere with the next step. So we need you to file them flat to the stringer.
Yeah, just make sure it's flat to the stringer.
So all 4 corners, and they need to be flat, or else the wood will not sit properly. Diagonal, the brace, sorry.
You can always touch up the ends of your ties then with some stain.
If you get some little marks on the stringers, don't worry about it.
Just, they have to be flat.
See, what I mean is that this will be piece that will be coming up like this, okay? And it cannot be interfered. If the tie's too long, this will be on a slant. So it's got to be right flush with the stringer. You can see what I mean here. Actually, if you look at that one, it's the third tie-in and the fourth tie-in.
I think that's it.
You want to put the inch shims on?
I don't know if we have time.
Yeah, we're kind of running on time.
We're okay?
Well, we've got 5 minutes, so,
Oh, do we? Okay.
yeah.
Okay. You want to do the cord or the cord?
Yeah, let's do the cord so that it dries for the next week.
Okay. So the cord is the 8x12 piece of lumber that you have.
Turning it upside down, this is the cord that goes along. So all the stringers will rest on it, and that's where the truss actually comes up. And yeah, there we go. That's better. That's what holds the truss in tension.
So you can probably your drawing tape down with your ties, the either the 14 or the 16-foot clearance. So take your cord, the vertical height up. How do you say that?
I suppose.
Yeah. Okay.
Like we talked about a couple weeks ago, that like a 2x4 type thing. Okay, you don't put it the 2-inch flat. That's not going to hold anything. You got to put the 2-inch and the 4-inch up and down. So the 2-inch is the width, and the 2x and the 4 is the height. So you have to cut that one to length.
You just place it on your drawing. And
Probably best to place it just beside it, just a little bit there. You can see. You can also use one of the other views to do
maybe
that too.
I'll cut it at the top part so you can see.
Okay.
So I've got it there. Off a little to the side so I can see where to cut. I just put a little groove in it. And then get my mat and finish cutting it. There we go. I'll just give a little file to the end of that.
You can touch up the end later.
Yeah, you can stain all this, all your boards later.
Now, the important thing about this is that it's in the center.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking down at it, you can see how it lines up with that tie, that center tie. So it should be right in line with that center tie, and then equal distance on each side. So yes, it's going to overhang.
So I'm just trying to get it in the right spot here.
If we want to get this assembly drying for the next week, so that it's not flimsy when you do it. So it gives it lots of time to dry.
Okay, so then take your glue in whatever applicator you have it, and I'm just making sure here. Okay, so then take your glue. Okay, just a minute. Got plug here.
Pin vices work good for this too.
And then put your glue down the center. Just follow that tie. Whoops. And then vertical height up. That right. Equal distance from each side. Trying to look straight down on it here. I think that looks pretty good. Take off the excess glue.
You notice how the excess glue goes on her fingers?
Somewhere, I'm gonna put it somewhere.
I would have to assume it's a lot easier to see and line up stuff without a camera in your way.
Yeah. I hope it's in the middle. I think so. I think that looks pretty good. It's nice when you can flip it over, then you can really tell if you
Okay,
how close you are.
leave it alone for a week.
Yeah, you can just kind of check it out, flip it over.
Again, that's why we don't use CA glue. If you need to adjust it, you can adjust it.
Okay. Looks good.
Okay, so that's it for this week. Next week, we'll be putting what's called the end shims on and probably the braces on each side. But I think going along pretty good, eh?
Yeah, yeah, really good.
And so far, what we've seen is it's everybody's doing a pretty good job. So, okay, back to you, Jim. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. Really do appreciate it. It's looking awfully nice. You're doing a fantastic job. Well, for those of you that have asked me where Dave Silvernail is and why he hasn't been back, he's been out of town.
Okay.
Normally, I would introduce him next. But he sent me an email a few minutes ago saying, can you postpone me until the end of the show? Because I'm still working on the project that I want to show tonight. So that's what I'm going to do. So now I'd like to turn to our featured modeler, Nick Massey, who owns ITLA.
Nick's on.
Yes.
Hey, Rick and Marie.
And Nick, I really do appreciate you taking the time to do this for us tonight. And I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Hey, how much just as
Hey.
a time? Just
Hi,
as a
Nick.
time check- Hey, Rick, how are you? Just as a time check, how much do I have?
45 minutes or so, whatever you need.
Okay, perfect, no problem. I just don't want to step on anybody's toes.
No.
So thanks again for the opportunity. And you know, I looked back through some of my old files, and you know, following Jim's advice, you know, the suggestion was show a little bit about what you do in your modeling, and talk a little bit about your company and how it all kind of integrates. So I'm going to do a little bit of that. I'm hoping it's interesting. If you don't like what you see as we're going along, just let me know and I'll change tact. But basically, I'll walk you through my home layout and how it came to be, and what it's all about. I hope you get a little flavor for a railway called the Algoma Central, which was basically incorporated in 1899, and it runs north from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, up through Hearst, Ontario. So I chose to model that railway many years ago, actually, prior to owning ITLA scale models. And you're going to see that there's a distinct difference between modeling Northern Ontario and modeling downtown cities and back alleys and stuff like that. But I have a love for both of those types of venues. So I guess I'm lucky enough to enjoy them both at this point. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to share with you some photos. I'm going to take you basically for a tour north up the line from Sault Ste. Marie up to Hearst. And I'm going to try to show you a couple of video clips as well of the models running. I'll warn you before I do, because you should probably turn your volume down so you don't get shocked by some of the locomotive horns or stuff such as that. Okay, and then I'll transition into some of the ITLA stuff and kind of share a little bit of that as well. Okay, so without further ado, can I, Jim, I'm going to share out. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, you should have access.
All right, so let me start here, and you guys tell me right now. I hope you're looking at a bunch of file or small images potentially.
Yes.
That is correct. We see your Explorer.
Okay, do you see my, now I've opened one of the photos. Do you see it now or not?
No.
No.
Yeah, what you have to do is you have to actually open the photo first, then share it.
Okay, so what if I did this? Can you see that?
Nope.
Nope.
You have to
No.
unshare and then click on the video first, or
All right. The photo.
the photo first, then share it.
Okie doke, we'll do that. Sorry for the technical difficulty.
You might also be able to share your desktop.
Yeah, it's a lot better. Let me walk you through this, Nick.
Sure.
So hit the share screen.
Okay,
Okay, when you open the share screen, I want you to look at the bottom of the screen and click on optimize for, are you going to share video?
I'm going to do photographs first and then a little video later. If
Okay,
it's,
so let's start with the photographs, then don't worry about that. Click on the upper left. On the upper left, that's your desktop. And that way, as you open photos and you see them open and close, we'll see what you see. Because it's really easy if you click on the photos, the other pictures to get lost.
Yeah, okay. Let's see what I can find. You
Click on
say
the
an
upper left is your desktop, and that just shares what you see.
All right, I'm not quite seeing that, but upper
The
left
upper-
of the screen.
There are a whole
right?
bunch of windows. The upper left window, you have one. Do you have one monitor or two?
I got two.
So it actually. So if you look at it, one of those will be your primary monitor.
Yes.
So you can see which monitor is which. Choose which monitor you want to share, but share one of the monitors, and that's what we'll see.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it'll say
Okay.
either screen 1 or screen 2.
I
Right.
gotcha. Okay, that's good. I will hang on 1 second. Apologize, guys, for this.
Oh, no worries. It's just it's the complexity of these PC stuff, these PCs and things.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm
Hey,
going to
we're all about learning, so you're learning.
try. All right, let me try this again. You see all my thumbnails probably.
Yes.
What do you see now?
Just
Same
don't.
thing,
Sorry?
same thing.
Same thing. You're only
Where
it
did
looks
your
like-
picture open? Did it open in the other window?
No, it opened on top of the same.
So you must have shared the app. The
Hang
You
on, let me
actually-
try. Yeah, let me try that again. I'm gonna whip over to a different screen. Maybe it'll work better if I do this. What are you seeing now?
YouTube.
yeah. Now we're seeing your toolbar at the bottom. Now you're
Okay.
perfect. Do that, and you're perfect. Open it.
Okay.
Open it there on that window. Move it over that window, and you'll be perfect. There you
All
go.
right, gotcha. All right, let's do that. How's that? We're starting to see that now?
Excellent.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right. How's that? Is that open?
All I see are the little pictures again.
A little bit. Click on.
There it is.
There you go.
Okay.
Now we're
So-
getting somewhere.
It's a screen 1, screen 2 thing. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so let me just walk you through a little bit of this, and this is a bit of real life history, I suppose. So this is from the 1951 timetable, the Algoma Central Railway. So you can see at the bottom, I mentioned Sault Ste. Marie. You guys might know where Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan is, right across the St. Mary's River, upper peninsula, Michigan. And then the Sault Ste. Marie, or the Sioux as it's known in Ontario. So the Algoma Central runs from the Sioux all the way up north. With a junction at Hawk Junction, takes you down to Lake Superior, Michipicoten Harbor, which was an important part of the railway in its day. I'll explain that a little bit later. And then up through a place called Franz, and that's important because it's a crossing of the CP transcontinental line that went from east to west in Canada here. Continuing north, we have a little bit of another interlocking at Oba, and it's crossing the CN. Again, a national transcontinental, a transcontinental route, the Canadian National, and then up to Hearst where it would terminate. And this was on the National Transcontinental Canadian Northern Railway at one time, which became CN a little bit later. So long story short, a lot of this is important to what I was modeling or am modeling in my basement. So basically, I selectively compressed this route and tried to imitate the traffic flow as well that occurred on this railway, mostly a resource railway, pulpwood moving southbound or coming southbound from the Michipicoten Range here down into the Steelton steel mill down here in Sault Ste. Marie. There was also coal and fuel oil that came in off of the ships at the docks at Mishpacotton, and that got routed up to the CN, and it went out not only for locomotive coal, but also to fire some of the paper mills up there too, in the Temiskaming region up around Hearst, east and west. So a lot of history in this area, kind of a neat road. Primarily because it was unique, I wanted to model it. You can't buy a lot of stuff for Algoma Central, so you have to make it basically, or kit bash. And it also had the opportunity to cross the national railways, the CN and the CP, and gives me a great excuse to model that as well. So the first thing I did, and this is where maybe some of the engineering geek in me might show a bit. So I made a planning model. So how do you take what you saw on that map and you put it into your basement? Well, here's how I did it. So this represents the room that the layout is in. And I was able to create a track plan. It's very, very busy. I know I probably violated one of the big rules in model railroading. But anyway, I got a lot of action and a lot of stuff in that space. Basically a double-decker layout. You saw where where Sault Ste. Marie is. This would be down in this area. And the railway runs, it's a point-to-point, 280 feet, about 4 times around the room. And also the CN and the CP are represented by closed loops around the room that will cross over the Algoma Central. There's France, so there's the crossing with the CPR. There's OBA, there's a crossing with the CNR. And then eventually the ACR will terminate here at Hearst, which just happens to be the CNR as well. So if you look at the color orange, that's the Algoma Central Railway. If you look at the color red, it's CPR. It's a little tougher to see that. It's just a single loop right through here. And if you look at the darker, it's blue actually, that's the CNR. So that's a 1-inch scale planning model. And that was made it really easy for me to understand where my benchwork had to be and where my curvatures were going to be, and made sure that everything would fit because all the curves were drawn to with a planning radius template, so that I knew I was drawing a 22-inch radius or a 24-inch radius, and I knew it would fit. So this gave me the ability to measure off a wall and say, well, I know that curve is going to be, 14 inches from this wall and, 15 inches from that wall, and I could nail a point in space. So that took a little while, about 6 months to create. This is a really early photo of the railway shortly after it's scenic completion up on the top here. You can see that planning model on the floor, and that's in the orientation of the room that it's sitting in. So you can kind of see the benchwork at this level here, the primary main level, and then down below is a secondary level that's still yet to be completed, that's accessed through helix, which you might have noted tucked in here. So there's a giant helix down here that winds me down to the bottom level. All right, so just going to show you a few of the models as we're moving northward up the line. So this is an example of one of my locomotives that I modeled specific to the ACR. This is Mikado number 60, the 60 class. And the ACR was a neat railway in the sense that they were basically, they weren't very rich, so they had to pick up secondhand equipment. So this series of locomotives came off the Wabash. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly or not, the Wabash or Wabash. So they modified it according to what they needed up north, the ACR that is. So this is a brass model that I modified to match the photos and the prints that I had on hand. So this is an Akane or a cane, old brass Mikado with Loke sound in it. And I put all the appliances on that were specific to this locomotive with the ACR ran. Fixed up the coal box. This is some brass modification in here that I had to do to give it a clear vision tender, which was common for the ACR. You can see some of the pulpwood. This is staple traffic on the ACR in the day, and they would cart it on flat cars, basically 40-footers with wooden racks. They got beat up quite a bit, but kind of a neat opportunity to model this. This is just real maple that I picked up out in the yard and have been sawing into little pieces for years now. This is another example of one of their Mikados. This is number 71. This prototype came off the Virginian Railway, believe it or not. So they had two of these. And this model is a brass West Side Southern Pacific MK10, I believe. And the reason I selected it is because its wheelbase and wheel diameter matched the Virginian model, and obviously what the ACR later used. So this required a bunch of work to it as well to make it look a little more ACR specific, including modifications on the tender. They did not run these very long. Apparently they were voracious coal eaters and required, as the story goes, required 2 firemen to keep this thing going down the line. Just a little bit of shot in the yard. This is a switcher number 19. So the ACR had 2 little 060s that stayed in Steelton or down in Sault Ste. Marie and moved all their yard traffic around the steel mill and around their own yard. I custom printed decals. This is stuff you can't buy. The steam locomotives had a yellow lettering here, and the freight locomotives were in white. Or sorry, the freight cars were in white. Just as a small aside. Close-up shot, front end of number 60 and side view of number 19. I really enjoyed, creating these models, or at least modifying existing kit bashing to give you that unique look. And I can almost guarantee you that there probably isn't a set of these models anywhere else, but here in my basement at the moment. So a lot of fun. Both are Loc sound equipped and a lot of fun to operate. Not to be confused with a little bit of diesel operation, but in 1951, the era that I'm modeling, October 51 specifically, that was a small period of time where steam and diesel coexisted on the Algoma Central. And the story was that the Algoma Central was struggling financially, and this is a true story. And with respect to their curvature and the grades on the railway, it took a lot of manpower and steam locomotion to get the loads north and south. The diesel represented a financial improvement. And when they tested the diesels early, and probably in 1950, I think they tested that F unit set. Anyway, they bought into diesel locomotion and basically became the first railway in Canada to dieselize fully. So 38 steam locomotives got replaced by, I think it was 22 Jeep 7s and a couple of SW 800s. And unfortunately, all the ACR steam locomotives got scrapped in 1952, the following year. Probably all went into the furnaces at Algoma Steel. This is another shot of a train coming south, actually, into Sault Ste. Marie. So this 29 is another brass model that I've modified to match prototype again. This was a Pacific Pike CPR consolidation. And I've modified that obviously with the correct ACR appliances. And again, the tender chop there to give you that clear vision rearward. You can see some of the cars starting to appear in the pictures. And a lot of these are all specifics off the roster that I've modeled, and I'll explain a bit of that later. So anyway, that's you can see I've touched up the photo a bit too. That's not, I wish that was what's actually happening in my basement, but it's not. Steam and the smoke is added in. Montreal River Bridge. I'll quickly show you this. If you've ever heard of the Algoma Central, this is the image you've probably seen, something like this. This is Montreal River Trestle or Bridge. So it is a very unique bridge that was built, first built without the power dam, and the power dam was poured around the base of that bridge shortly after, I would guess around I think it was 1917 or 1918, something in that era, that the dam was put in place for hydroelectric service, obviously. But this is a very famous bridge up that railway. So of course I'm trying to recreate it in my basement for the purpose of the obvious importance to the railway. There's a few more pieces of it constructed now. This is an older photo, but basically plywood core that supports the entire structure. And then I'm building the micro engine towers up to meet that. So all the structure is contained within the girder, the plate girder system in here, and just temporarily holding it up. But at any rate, this is my selectively compressed version of that. The concrete here is really foam core that's skinned with a plaster or a drywall compound, if you will. So still a project that's underway, believe it or not. So only about probably 12 years old now as far as the project goes. One day we'll get her done. This is further up the line. This photo was actually used on the cover of Canadian Railway Modeler quite a few years ago now, but basically shows a typical, a set of Jeep 7s pulling freighter passenger north here through freighter, and train order boards. Obviously, they existed. These little tiny train order type facilities existed all the way up and down the line, and that's, as you guys might know, train order operations required this kind of thing, and you'd see that those little structures and guys living in them throughout the year to serve the railway. Kind of interesting function, I guess. This is another photo of 71 coming southbound this time, and it's got some of the oil tank cars with it. Again, you can kind of see what type of work I did to these locomotives to make them a little more prototypical. Some of the neat things, I love the white flags as an example. That's a neat little touch. Picked that up somewhere along the way, and I can't remember if it was a magazine or online, to be quite honest. But a lot of fun to build these, a lot of fun to weather, obviously. And then this is another Loc Sound equipped locomotive. Another pair, there's 71 there, there's 29. This is up in Hawk Junction. So that, remember that branch or that point, the junction point where there's a branch line that goes down to Lake Superior, and that's where a lot of the traffic flow generated early on for the Algoma. And just a little close-up shot of the engine house, selectively compressed. This was, luckily I was able to get the plans from a lot of the buildings and a lot of locomotive plans and roundhouse plans from the railway itself. So I was able to scale some of the structures properly, if you will, although selectively compressed. This was a 6-stall engine house at Hawk Junction in its day, but I only had room to model the 3 stalls. But this existed prior to 1955, I think. So this is my interpretation of it being there in 1951, the year that I'm modeling. So that's a little Bachmann Spectrum, 280 back there with a Proto 2000 clear vision tender that I was able to stick onto that one. So again, that became a lot more visually similar to the real ACR number 40. And there's another consolidation, same type of deal, Bachmann with a proto tender, in this case hauling steel north and empty pulpwood racks north so that they'll get filled and returned, as an example. So this is coming through Hawk Junction. Photo backdrop, by the way, in the rear is luckily it's a photo backdrop of all that area, so it's very prototypical of what it looked like, what it looks like in the fall, if you will. Early photos, a lot more scenery in there now. And this is up at Oba. What I want to do is I'd like to show you a couple quick video clips, but I'm afraid to come off of the screen share, but we'll give it a try here in a moment. This is where the CN showed you on the diagram. The CN crosses the ACR, would be just behind us to the left in this photograph. And the cool thing about this picture is it represents a true train movement that occurred back in the day. Algoma Central would run a hot, basically in their world, a hot train would come up from Michipicoten, and it would be bringing coal to the CN. And behind all this, you'd see some steel loads as well. So fresh steel loads out of Algoma Steel down in the Sioux. And the CN would run a caboose hop and to Oba and basically try to pick this train up, especially in the wintertime while the journals were hot. Because if the journals froze, it was too hard to get the train restarted. So their goal was to try to make a hot transfer, if you will, to keep the journals from freezing back in the day in the wintertime. So kind of a neat little tidbit. These are things you learn when you read all that, the volumes of material that are out there. This is an overview of some of the equipment on the ACR being unique. And again, I mentioned I try to model a little bit of it to replicate that specific stuff on the roster. Pulpwood cars, this was the early version with a rack that had a set of boards up top that tried to hold it all together. I'm guessing that didn't work so well, so they ended up with just end racks, just like you can see over here in this photograph, in part of the photograph. The snow plow, they had two snow plows, one north end plow, one south end plow. They're both represented. The caboose, this color scheme and style, 3-window caboose, predated the ones you would have seen in the photographs that you might be familiar with from the 70s and 80s. So this backdated the railway again where I wanted it to be. You can see some steel loads that are outbound. You can see some empty gondolas that are coming in. Some have some scrap in them that in theory would have been delivered to the blast furnace. Lots of outside brace box cars on the ACR, which I personally love. These are AccuRail cars. I love these guys. They were there. They served the railway for a variety of commodities, but primarily they were shipped from Sault Ste. Marie with paper newsprint in them. So a lot of the pulp that came down from the woods up north became newsprint in Sault Ste. Marie, and then it went back out. And from what I understand, it was used in the New York Times as an example, and many of the big newspapers in the U.S. So those cars would cross over the border at Sault Ste. Marie. You see a couple little ore jennies in there. Those were the early wooden ore cars, which later were changed out, and they used steel hoppers. The two-bay steel hoppers they got from the Virginian and from the Norfolk and Western. So you'll see those floating around on my layout as well. Very prototypical of what they did. And the ACR had one lonely steel boxcar, which was kind of an anomaly. And this is a Sylvan model, actually. It's an accurate model of that car, but a one of, which is something every Algoma modeler would probably want to have. The rest of the stuff is bridge traffic, which would have been north and south on the ACR crossing, of course, at Sault Ste. Marie, and then east and west on CP or CN as build. So that's kind of one of the things I love to do, is to recreate the actual from the roster, the actual cars plus the traffic that the flow that they would represent in commodities. Shot of the two plows down in the Steelton yard, in theory in the fall, getting ready for deployment to service in the winter. There's the one and only on company service reefer that they had. And this is an AccuRail car. Lettered with the standard decals. These are CDS decals that I don't even think you can find anymore, but they had that car that serviced obviously the railway. A lot of those section houses that I mentioned where the guys were stationed, this is how they would get all their groceries and stuff eventually up and down the line. So kind of a neat little history. You kind of get a flavor for how that railway operated. And then this is an example of the CP crossing at Franz. And this would be this, in my case, I'm calling this the CPR Dominion, the transcontinental passenger train would be crossing through the ACR here. Red boards are fairly prototypical of what's up there still to this day at that junction point. Same shot, same place. This time the ACR train is crossing the diamond. And you can see the guy hooping the orders to the conductor in the caboose. A lot of these little signs like this I made myself actually many, many years ago, just the flanger signs that were prototypical of CPCN and the AC as well, ACR. And many of you who know about ITLA or know what we produce might ask yourself, in all those previous photos, you haven't seen any ITLA stuff, and that's because that part of the layout really predated my ownership of the company. And this is kind of the other side of the layout that we're using as basically where, the place where we'll put a lot of our ITLA product for test and for display, et cetera. So some of the stuff pictured in here is currently available. This is actually the Southside Hotel that's currently on our website. And at that time, before it was launched, one of the names I was playing with was St. Thomas Hotel. Didn't have quite the ring that I was after. So we renamed it and launched the kit. Some of this stuff is just prototype building that we're experimenting with at the time. As you search for something that's unique and something you think that will appeal. These kits back in here, these are my modular walls that we offer today, and they're a fun kit. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but each of these wall panels is a kit unto itself. And this is just an example of grouping them together and enjoying how they can be used to create your own signature structure. And then there's a bunch of early test models that are up in the front here. Some of this you might see come back in our lineup. A couple of portions of these existed previously, but we've taken them down for revamping and just haven't got back to bringing them online yet. But perhaps we will over time. Okay, so that is an example of what's going on in the basement. I'm going to try. Let's see if I can do this properly. I am going to try to show you a couple of videos, okay? Quick videos of the action on the layout. I'm going to warn you though, turn your volume down a little bit, and I'll give you a count of three.
Can I make the suggestion you stop and reshare? Because unless you click the share sound, there won't be any sound. So
Yeah.
if you just stop sharing. Now click share, but at the bottom, you'll see a thing that says share sound and optimize for video.
Yep.
Click optimize for video.
Okay.
And then share the same screen and play the video, and it'll be much better.
You got it. Thanks
Thanks.
for the tip.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Watch your audio. So this is one of those standard ACR freights of the day in the early 50s. This is Montreal River Bridge.
If you click it, it'll go to full screen. If you click on that little box there on the, yeah.
You got it.
There you go.
There you go. Sorry about that. Just give you a couple of clips here just to get a flavor for the action. Outside brace boxcars, love them. And those are just proto Jeeps. And that's a brass Jeep with, I think that's got a hook sound in it as well. Those are those Norfolk and Western hoppers in ore service on the ACR, as I had mentioned to you before. Okay, I'm going to jump back. I'm going to show you. Can you see that one coming up?
Yes.
Okay. For those that love steam, here's a little bit of steam action at Oba. That's the ACR crossing over the CNR at Oba. This would have been one of their passenger trains that would have been heading north to the first. The troop kitchen car is an interesting thing, and it's not another project that's incomplete. The ACR bought a bunch of those and they used them as head-end baggage cars. Old LaBelle cars. Prototypical for ACR. And then one more for you guys. This is again going to be Oba, and this is the CN, again crossing over the ACR, which is here in the foreground. Coal hoppers, obviously servicing the power plants, the paper plants along the CNR. Bunch of AC Dons. Those are kind of symbolic of the railway. Pipes and steel. This is all typical of the traffic that would have been transversing Northern Ontario in the day. H&B cars, Rick mentioned TH&B earlier in his presentation. So that kind of gives you a flavor, I hope, of what we offer. Or sorry, what's down in the basement. Hang on one sec. I gotta kill that just a moment. Okay, let me just get that out of the way. All right, so any questions at this point before I transition into some ITLA stuff for you guys?
It's not a question, Nick, but one thing I really admire is you don't leave any of the hooks on your couplers, and I think it makes such a big difference, especially with something that's as super detailed as your layout. And it's just every image is beautiful.
Oh, thanks very much for noticing that. Yeah, that's a decision I made a long time ago. You know, when you're not going to use that KD function, you just chop off that glad hand, and I like that look personally. Thanks for noticing that, Greg. That's good.
And of actually seeing Nick's layout up close and personal, it's as nice as it looks.
Hey, Brian, good to see you. Good to see you.
I have to say, Nick, you have some beautiful super elevation on that layout on the bridge there.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you picked that out. That bridge is, and that's prototypical to the drawings on that bridge. There's a super elevation, and there's actually a grade on that bridge as well.
Wow.
So I modeled them both, which is
very nice.
Crazy, but hey, part of the fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So shall I carry on, guys? Any other questions on the layout or modeling? We can go back to it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is let's talk a little bit about ITLA. Tell me when you can see that. Can you see that screen?
Nope.
No, not yet. Wait a minute.
Nothing.
Yeah, hang on. You're probably seeing me right now, which you don't want to see. There, how's that?
Yep.
Yes.
That's better.
So Jim had given me the opportunity to do this back in January, and we really appreciated that opportunity. And some of the content here is similar, but I'm going to change it up a bit when I talk to the actual slides here. But as mentioned by Jim early on, so Renee and I own ITLA scale models, and we manufacture precision laser cut scale model kits. So this activity here grew out of obviously the layout that you saw and my love for model railroading and for scale model building in general. So I got a fortunate opportunity. It was 8 years ago now, a little over 8 years ago. We had the opportunity to buy the company called Imagine That Laser Art. And with Renee's great support and help, we were able to transition the company into basically into our vision of what we believe we could do with it. So ITLA stands for Imagine That Laser Art. It's just a new incarnation of it. We've taken the company a little further along in terms of some of the fidelity of the models. You're going to see a little bit about some of the details that are engraved in the features in terms of fit and finish and configurability and all that are some of the fun engineering that we brought into the original company, and then obviously developed our own products since that kickoff in 2012. So fortunate enough to be providing products worldwide as well. A lot of fun to do that. Love to see people recognizing us from all over the world and enjoying our kits. So as noted previously, and a couple other times I've might have mentioned that we model or we like to represent an industrial and back alley theme with our product. So if you would go have a look at our website, itlascalemodels.com, and you're going to see these categories. And I invite you to delve into these categories, and they're gonna contain some neat stuff, I hope. I think it's neat stuff anyway. So we do a lot of masonry and brick in laser cut wood, and you won't see a lot of that out there, but I'm going to explain to you why. You're going to see a lot of plastics, obviously. You're going to see some of the plasters and the resins and such, which is all great. There are some advantages to using laser cut wood for that type of construction, and I hope I can explain some of that here. So without further ado, the beauty of laser engraved and cut wood kits. So in these images here, two small examples of the opportunity that wood as a medium gives us when using laser engraving on the material. So in the center of the slide, there's a neat example of some really worn concrete with some rebar showing through. This is a really cool example that is easily done. I won't tell you, I won't explain how. It's a little bit more involved than that, but it's easily done by the machinery once you tell it how to do it, if you will. The example to the right is a typical wall section that we would produce. And if you went to my website, you're going to find some really easy tips and tricks on how to paint these products and how to create weathered brick and multicolored brick and such. Very, very simple to do. And I'm not just saying that, but it's a lot easier than you think. And it actually becomes a little bit infectious. As you start playing with the colors, you just continue to enjoy. A lot of fun to sit there and do. We use a lot of premium quality base products. So micro plywoods, MDF and laser board are our staple products. The reason we chose those is because they give us matte surfaces, durable surfaces, but they're easy to work with just the same. So we can etch and engrave fine details and reliefs into those surfaces. And you can cut the material and you can shape the material easily with an X-Acto blade and a razor saw. So that's the other fun part about it. If you wanted to weather it up even more, you could chip the bricks off even more than we've done with the laser. And the cool thing about it is many types of adhesives will put this material together. So from simple PVA wood glues to even CA super glues, depending on the joint and the location on the model. Weld Bond is the one we would recommend in terms of a PVA glue. Tight Bond 2 is also very nice to use. So I mentioned a bit of a tutorial, and I hope you'll look at it on our website. But this wall is an example. Very simple rattle can spray paint is where you start, and then you apply your acrylic washes to bring the engraved brick and stone to life. Then after that, the other beauty of the laser engraved wood is that it's a great medium to put the pastels and chalks to, because it really bites. It really gives that product a bite, the pastel and the chalk. And you can see here how easy it is to apply and how realistic it becomes. Configurable by design. That was hard for me to say. So some of our kits, we can build as many as 15 different wall combinations out of the same kit. And those of you who know us have seen some of these examples. A fully walled structure can also be a shallow relief structure and can also be a flat background structure. So ease of assembly and precise fit and finish are what we try to provide. This example that I'm picturing here is our O-Scale Olympia tool and die. Very, very proud of this kit. It's a beautiful, beautiful kit. If you looked at it in person, the pictures just don't do it justice, unfortunately. But if you looked at it in person, you'll see a ton of engraving, a ton of great details that come with this kit. My humble opinion, of course, I'm telling you that. Most of this is all manufactured in-house. The only components in this picture that are not are these castings right here, the sacks, the crates, those little keg barrels and the oil drums. Those are all hydrocal castings actually from a company up in Quebec that we use. Everything else you see here is manufactured in-house. So it's either MDF, it's either birch plywood, or any other, the laser boards and things such as that we will use. So we chose to do that because we can manage the product quality that way. So as an example, the windows we make in-house. And the reason being, I can tune those windows to fit and I can control the quality. That's the back side of the building is another example. There's some of that really neat engraving that we introduce into a lot of the kits. And you can see how the painting really can bring this stuff alive. And again, this isn't as complicated as it looks. It's just washes of acrylic paint over top of a base coat of spray. And all we need to do is layer that with some clear matte sprays along the way, and you can build yourself the depth of colors that will really replicate real life. You look at the roof details in this kit, indicative of many of our kits as well. We like to focus on ensuring that the roofs have a lot of good detail on them. They're interesting, they're unique. Also on the walls as well. So you'll see lots of opportunity to mix and match all these parts in the kit, whether they go on the wall, they go on the roof, either way, you dress it up as you like. The configurability I mentioned, the engineering, if you will, in these kits, these are the same kit, basically the fully walled structure, flat structure, and the shallow relief, if you will, in the background. So all this comes out of that one kit. You choose the building style and you build it to fit the space that you have. Different shot of that same model, and this is where I wanted to show you the model a bit more than just the sales pitch, so to speak. Because I want you to appreciate the engineering and the effort that went into this. I hope you do anyway. So again, laser engraved and cut wood. I like the way it can represent masonry and brick and stone better, I think, than plastic. But just maybe I'm biased, but I like the way it's easy to work with, easy to paint. It gives you that nice matte finish that is so realistic, I guess, if you will. Go look at your brick walls out in the real world, and I think you'll see the same level of matte and texture even in some cases. So in this case, we've got our lighting installed, and we have our dock interior installed, and you'll see that a little bit later. So this is an optional kit that we sell as well that adds that depth to the models that is seldom offered. Just a last shot of that. This is O scale, of course. So the fun part of O scale is the mass of the size of this stuff, right? So the concrete here is just MDF again, laser engraved or etched. Just those lines are etched. The rest of it's all paint. So this is just a gray. I think I used this might have been a latex house paint if I remember correctly, but just basically rolled on, give it a little bit of texture. If anybody's ever heard of the salt technique, so we used a little bit of salt on this to kind of give it a bit of a pitting, and then just basically washed some acrylics on that to stain the area. So kind of a neat little shot over top of the box cars, and the guys working on the stamping dies out here deciding what to do. And let's go to the other extreme. So from O scale down, we'll wind that down to N scale. So this is one of our most recent launches. This is the all-state kit. It exists in HO scale as well. We took it down to N scale as an opportunity to a couple of reasons, actually. It was somewhat of a personal challenge in that I wanted to see how fine I could get our laser systems to produce or to cut parts. So this kit really helped me define where my level of capability off these laser systems is, and I was very, very happy to achieve what we did on this kit. There's some amazingly thin cross sections in this thing. So again, this being N scale, a little bit hard to tell in this photograph, but there's some really cool details. The fire escapes are all laser cut. This is all laser board material, if you will. We've got obviously the MDF walls, the laser board pilasters. We have obviously real wood etched deck here. That's really right off the laser too. There's no coloration other than just glued that thing down to the substructure. And you can see the window mullions, very, very fine scale for N. These are all individually cut and installed into the wall. A little bit more close up, some 3D parts here. Our friend Bernard at Mini Prints provides us with these little cyclone vents and the rooftop for this water tank. Everything else you see in the photograph is all produced in-house here, all laser cut. The ducting is something I love doing the ducting. I think it's perhaps a seldom modeled feature, but it adds so much to your finished structure. I think it's a really, really neat addition, whether it's horizontal on a roof or whether it's vertical on a wall. That same kit shown here with a 4th and 5th floor extension and opened up. So the whole back end of it's been opened up to provide a background building. So it can cover obviously a longer wall space, if you will. That kit's been very, very popular, and I'm glad to see it being so well received by the N-scale community. Here's one of the other things we manufacture, and I thought I'd show you guys this tonight because it's unique, it's very different, it's a niche product. But there is a fairly large group of modelers out here who do model the transit systems in New York and Chicago and Boston and things such as that. And actually, we send a lot of this overseas, believe it or not. So into Europe and down into Australia, there's a lot of guys that like modeling the New York and the Chicago elevated, as an example. So this is our elevated railway structure. In this case, I'm showing you the New York version, which really is solid girder below the carrying the track superstructure. The Chicago version would be an open web truss. And in reality, they used both, but in general terms, New York was known for solid girder, Chicago for the open web truss. But these are all laser cut wood kits. There's obviously no plastic in this. There's no laser board in this either. This is all wood. A lot of fun to build. Spray paint, again, this was just a quick shot of gray, Krylon gray. And the track structure here was a quick shot of camo brown, which is Rust-Oleum, I think I'm using in this case. And then hand laid the rail on the deck as an example. So these can be used also as bridge structure. So I've got a couple of customers that are doing that now, where it's great viaduct as an example, if you wanted to pick up a kit or two kits, but it's kind of a unique structure to add to your layout. And then onto the modular walls. You've heard me talk about this. I really enjoy building this stuff. This is one of my favorite products, and this is on my layout here now, this particular model. But we do it in N scale, we do it in HO scale. I'm hoping to bring it to O scale as well, because I think there's an opportunity. A lot of people asking actually in that scale as well. Now, a lot of you might ask again, well, I've seen the Walther stuff, I've seen all the other stuff in plastic, and yeah, it's there. I agree. I think we offer you something a little bit better in terms of the fidelity of the prototype and the ease and ability to kit bash this. So when you look at this image, what you don't necessarily see is that all these components are individual components that you plug into the wall frames. So the parts are separate, you paint them separately, you don't have to mask, and you bring them all together in the configuration that you like. So if I wanted this window, as an example, down here on the second story, I could swap it with this brick panel, put the brick panel back up there if I was so inclined to do. All these parts are mix and match, plug and play. Fire escapes, as you can see, ducting, vents, and all the neat stuff that the technology allows us to produce. And it's something that I hope brings another level of detail to the discerning modeler. A little bit more of a close-up view there. I talked about the ability to cut fine with this laser system that we have. This is an example of a grill over top of a fan. There's the fan without the grill, and there it is with a grill over top. So you can see it's hard to see in this image, but you can see right through that. Opening window sashes are possible as well. Lots of really neat stuff. And again, the laser engraved brick. Spray painted with, what did I use here? I used just a red oxide primer, just like an automotive body primer, to give it the base red color, and then went over it with a few washes or highlights of burnt umber and some oranges to bring a little bit of that other tone out. And then the mortar in the joints here is, in this case, I used a product from DAP, which is called Fast and Final, and it's a drywall compound. And all I did was run that in with my thumb and wipe off the excess, and that's the look that you can get. This is that same wall piece installed on my layout, actually hiding a corner that's a little bit ugly. So that's an example of how you can make these work. These come in 4-story heights normally. I stitched on an extra 2 stories to provide a 6-story structure. That's the other benefit of this particular product line. It's easy to cut and fit and create anything you need to fill a space you have. The details, we talked a little bit about rooftops. This is the N-scale rooftop kit as an example. Ducting, love all this little stuff that we've been able to cut out on the lasers. This little air conditioner unit, hard to see, but again, another set of those grills over top of fans, pallets, chimneys, our water tank, roof walkout, and then Bernard's cyclone vents as well, also part of that kit. This exists in HO scale and O scale, different variants of the products, but they're all out there in the varying scales. Loading dock interiors, I showed you that shot of the O scale version earlier on. This is the HO scale version. This is what the kit looks like outside the model. And then all you do is tuck it behind that wall opening. And that gives you that extra depth. And once you light that up, actually, it's a really, really nice feature that, that people have come to appreciate. And again, we talked a bit about the engraving and the cutting, and this is some of the stuff I think that helps us as manufacturers and modelers enjoy laser cut wood as a medium to model in a little bit, I would say a little more than plastic. That's again my humble opinion. And the reason is the systems that we're able to use to make these products, we can get to some very, very fine and unique detail on. So the N scale water tank you see there on your left was another challenge. This is Renee challenging me to make something that I was actually going to not even give it a try. But she pushed me into it, and lo and behold, she was right. So hats off to Renee for that. The HO scale weathered masonry, I mentioned that earlier. You can see that here. You can see our little in-scale loading dock. And then those fire escapes with a great little, that see-through effect that you can create here. So if you tried to injection mold some of this, you will, I don't believe you could get to that fine level of detail. So in summary, we try to, well, we do provide kits that are easy to assemble. They have a precise and repeatable fit and finish. My goal is to make sure you're happy. If you're happy, I'm happy as a modeler and as a manufacturer. Minimal parts cleanup, easy to paint. So when I design a product, I'm honestly thinking about how can I build it, and how can I build it quickly, easily, and with a high degree of quality, right? So that's what I try to put in or engineer into these kits, and that's the thought process behind it. Tab and slot construction, configurability gives you the option to mix and match wall panels, create different shapes. What's shown in here in front of you are a little HO scale Albany manufacturing company is really a 4-sided building that we sell, but this is it in a 12-inch long, half-inch deep backdrop flat, if you will. But lots of cool little details, lots of fun to paint and to assemble. Off to the right is the N scale Allstate, the rear wall. You can see the duct work, you can see the fire escapes in our water tank as well. So it's a lot of fun. I hope you'll give us a look on our website, give us a try. Many of you have, and I appreciate the fact that you have. But again, Jim, I thank you for the opportunity to have the time here on your show and to talk a little bit about my modeling and my company. And I hope that was helpful for everyone.
Well, Nick, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do it. I'm so impressed to see some of the models that you have and so forth. I wonder if you would be interested in being a part of what we call build-alongs on our shows, where a manufacturer and a modeler get together and select the kit that the modeler is going to build on the show, and then the manufacturer offers that kit to other modelers at a discount that would like to build it along with him. Mm-hmm. And if you'd like to be a part of that and do one of your kits, I don't think finding a modeler will be a problem. In fact, I think we probably have some on the show right now that would love to volunteer to do that. And so if you'd like to do it, I'd like to try to find a modeler to build it on the show. Okay. Let me, I'll get together with you afterwards, Jim, and we'll see what we can do. That sounds great. Thank you so much. And again, assuming Nick and I get together, which I know we will, if you're interested in being the modeler who builds the kit, you know my email address, jimkello1@gmail.com. Send me an email and we'll see if we can get together with you and Nick. So Nick, thank you so much for being here this evening. I really do appreciate it. Your railroad is just outstanding, no question about it. It's really beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
it's obvious to me at least that you've taken the same artistic knowledge to your company that you did in building your model railroad. So best of luck to you. Thanks again so much for being here tonight.
My pleasure, Jim. Thanks for recognizing that. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, there was a lot of chatter in the Zoom meeting about your kits and all that. So you might find a volunteer in there.
Well, since I don't get the chat, they need to send me an email in.
I think Brian should do it. Brian, are you there?
Brian Schilling?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Nick. It's Clark Cooning, by the
Hi,
way.
Clark. How you doing?
Good.
What's
Hey,
that
listen.
Montreal thing? What's that thing on the chair back there?
Well, that's the winning team.
Oh my God, I don't have time for this right now, guys. I don't have time for this. I gotta go now to Dave Silvernail, who I hope is finished preparing for this evening. And Dave, I'll turn it over to you, sir. Thanks again, Nick. I really do
Okay.
appreciate it.
You're welcome, Jim.
All right, I finally got the this thing ready. So now we gotta go through Sure Sound, optimize to that.
I keep getting emails from people saying, what happened to Dave Silvernail? What happened to Dave Silvernail?
Well, besides being up in Train Mountain for a weekend, which took both a Wednesday and a Saturday, and just kind of got in the middle of there.
You say you got a nice tan in the process.
I tried to avoid the sun as much as possible. Now I'm trying to find the god dang thing. I don't know if this is the right one or not. Not quite. Hang on.
Well, while you're looking for that, let me clean up a few other things here for the show. Clark Cooning MMR has agreed to do the spray painting section for us, so that's taken care of, and I'll notify the modeler about that. And I think Clark has already been in correspondence with him, so I think that's taken care of. And Nick Santos has volunteered to do the soldering of the feeder wire. So I'll get with Nick and arrange a time for him to do that. And Daniel Brewer found a great site in Switzerland that lists all different kinds of O-scale manufacturers of European modelers. So I sent that to George, and that pretty well answers his question. And George, if you can't find a manufacturer in that list, they probably they're not out there. Because that looked to me like an all-inclusive list of European manufacturers. So that's all I had. Dave, I'll come back to you now if you're ready.
There we go. Okay, I thought I better show the results before I show you how I do this, because I keep explaining to guys how I do it and everybody's going, they don't understand. This is the Feather River Canyon side of my 10-foot module. That's all granite work. In a minute here, it'll jump to the next scene. Here's a shot of my equipment. A Badger 105 Patriot double action airbrush. It has a Grex regulator just under it. And then I've got a Grex double action airbrush as well, which is new and I haven't quite started using it yet. I only used it for drying paint today. Believe it or not, those two castings are of the same, from the same mold. One has white gesso put on it, and the other one has black gesso. In a minute, I'll start the process on the black gesso. Okay, now I start the process. And what I do is I take what's called titanium white. I fog it from a distance. Try not to go down into any cracks.
What kind of air pressure are you using?
Double action takes about 15 pounds. I actually set 40 pounds on my compressor, and right at the bottom of the airbrush, there's a little air regulator for pressure, so I can adjust.
Is this acrylic tube paint?
This acrylic paint is called High Flow by Golden. It actually does not need to be thin to be run out of an airbrush, and they consider it an ink, not a paint. The pigment is just finer. This is titanium white, Golden paints, and it's part of their High Flow acrylic series.
Oh, thank
really
you.
considered an ink instead of a paint. I just go slowly. Just trying to cover the top surfaces only. Just get it whiter and whiter. Since I'm so far away, it's hitting like droplets. What I'm doing today is a granite scene, more of a California rock work. I'll move closer for certain areas. Spraying down only. I think that's enough. Now I clean out the airbrush.
Dave, while you're cleaning your brush there, I notice you're not using a spray booth. Is because this is acrylic, you don't have to worry about overspray?
This is acrylic. You can get some overspray, but it's not toxic.
Now I'll load up my second color, which is a neutral gray.
Besides, while I'm cleaning the airbrush, that paint is drying. Dries quickly.
Oh, thank you.
And we start again.
Now I'm putting on what you consider the base color for the rock.
This goes rather quickly. And that's it for that.
How do you know that that's enough for that color? Okay.
Well, the old thing is, if you don't like it, you can always repaint and start over.
Got it.
So you just have to pick a point where you think it's enough.
For cleaning the airbrush with the acrylics, I don't need to strip it down and take it all apart. I just use a airbrush cleaner, rinse it a couple times. Every once in a while I have to swab out the bowl, and it's ready for the next color.
There's another product Badger uses. You put on the
Third
needle,
color
which
is
keeps
a
the
shading
acrylic from
gray.
bonding to
And
it.
it's a little more translucent. And you just hit certain spots with it. Go back into the shadow areas.
I have the impression that you got the garage door open.
Yeah, I forgot to close it. I'm actually
Just
right
a little
outside the garage.
So that's the reason why you don't need a paint booth.
I've painted inside with this.
Okay.
The reason you don't need a paint booth is it's not toxic. It's acrylic. It's all water-based.
That's pretty good right there. These acrylics dry in 5 to 10 minutes. And you can actually put wet acrylic on wet acrylic. It'll blend just a bit. I started playing around with Ultric fluid acrylics, which you had to thin down to use an airbrush, but it turned out very nice matte finish. And the reason I do this, I don't have the patience to sit there and try to put on wash after wash after wash. I add a little bit of green to that, and this one's pretty well done. Oh, I do have to come back and hit a little highlights with it. I'll do that in a little bit. Back for highlighting.
I'm using the titanium white for highlights.
Bit too much.
That does happen.
What I try to do is a real dry brush technique. A little bit of paint on the brush, brush it out, use what's left to just hit tips. So sometimes if you get a little too much, go back with the shading gray and just take it out. And that's it for that.
That's really something, Dave. Thank you.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Anybody have any other questions about it?
Dave, what were you using for that shading gray?
It's another color from the Golden High Flow acrylics. It is called a shading gray.
Okay.
It's a darker gray and it has more, they have a product which is kind of an extender. It's basically the clear acrylic base. So it becomes more translucent. They do the same thing with the red oxide to make a translucent red oxide.
And they're already thinned for airbrushing, right?
They thin perfectly for an airbrush.
Huh. I'll have to, where do you find those?
I pick them up at Dick Blick's.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I've gotten stuff from him. Thanks.
Yeah, Golden. They're in the more better paints now. Is it art? Paint stores for artists.
It's a beautiful job. Beautiful job you do, Dave. It really is. It's really extremely creative.
I'm just lucky. I can see the different shades and I pay attention to the different shades out in nature. So I'm able to duplicate it fairly well.
It's really outstanding. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Not a problem. 2 weeks, I'll do the Colorado mountains.
Fantastic. I'll look forward to that in 2 weeks. So that's it for tonight. Next time, Wednesday, the 9th of June, Earl Hackett is going to start us on his 3D printing process. Earl's going to take us from the concept of a model to actually the CAD drawing for that model, the preparation of that CAD drawing to be printed, the printing, the cleanup from the printer,
still here,
and the whole process. So I think it'll really be something interesting. He's going to be doing it over probably a month or so of different shows. And I think it'll really be very informative for us. Also, on that show, we have Anita Walker, who owns Central Coast Trains in California. And she is the first hobby shop owner that we've had on the show that has a brick and mortar hobby shop in California. Had it for 26 years. And I think she's really going to be an enjoyable guest for us. And then Martin Breck built MMR. He's going to be back talking about scratch building a car. Bill Davis is going to be building his, doing his build along of the LaBelle kit. And we're going to have Paul Thompson or Ted Becker, whichever is available, for quick tips. So I hope you'll join us. I also hope that you'll go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, where you'll get more information about the upcoming shows and what we're going to be doing. And again, if you have not registered or subscribed to the website, please do so, so that you'll get the login information sent to you each show in an email. Also, I like your comments. I get probably 3 or 4 after each show, and I really do appreciate them. And there's a form on our website that you can it's really just a way for me to get the information. But if you'll fill out the form and send me your questions or comments, I really would appreciate it, because it helps us try to figure out the kinds of things that we ought to have on the show. So thank you so much for coming this evening. Really do appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. And we hope to see you back again. In the meantime, happy modeling to everybody. Thanks again for coming.